I love Space Engineers, but every now and again I think of small changes that could be made to it to make it even better. And some of these changes would make an absolutely massive difference to the game. So today I'm going to go over some of the smallest changes to Space Engineers that would make the biggest difference. Currently in Space Engineers, assuming that you're on the right side of the planet, a trip from the Earth-like planet to Mars takes around 5.25 hours. And I don't know about you, but that's a long time. I know that planets are this far apart for realism, but sometimes you have to sacrifice realism to make gameplay stronger. I know the jump drive exists, but I kind of want the jump drive to be a shortcut, not the solution to the problem. For example, to get to the Earth-like planet to the alien planet is 16 hours, and whilst getting to Mars might be a reasonable amount of time, that is an unreasonable amount of time to fly to a planet. I have to use the jump drive. In my opinion, and I'm sure you guys have your own opinions, the jump drive should be used to shortcut that time, being an endgame tool to allow you to bypass the time that it takes to get between planets. However, I believe that you should, in your spaceships, be able to fly to other planets like Mars, the alien planet, etc, etc. This would be an easy change to do, you just have to move the planets closer together. I feel like somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes is probably a reasonable time, as it's a long enough time to make them feel far away, but not long enough that it's a tedious amount of time to spend travelling somewhere. 10 to 15 minutes at 100 meters a second, it's around 60 to 90 kilometers, which is smaller than the distance between the Earth-like planet and its moon. Here's the Earth-like planet with Mars places 60 kilometers away, and you can see they're pretty close. Whilst I do want them closer together, I do feel like this is a little bit too close. If we start to extend the distance between planets again, it'll start to take longer to get there, and we'll end back up at square one. And I feel like 10 to 15 minutes is a good amount of time to fly between planets. So instead, we'll just have to find a way to move larger distances in a shorter amount of time. Everyone, including Keen, wants to increase the speed limit. Increasing it just a tiny amount makes such a massive difference. Even just flying around the planet at 250 meters a second is such a better experience than the 100 meters of the base game. And if we hypothetically increase the speed limit to 1000 meters per second, that would drastically reduce the amount of time it takes to fly between planets, even without moving them. But, as we're all aware, there are issues with this. In most scenarios, having any increased speed limit is fine, but it's those niche scenarios that create the issues. If you've ever gone above 100 meters a second, you know that if you hit a voxel, you have a chance to phase through it, you have a chance to partially phase through it with half your ship in and half your ship out, or you have a chance to phase through it, but the back of your ship is vanished. There's also issues with subgrids. It seems to be some sort of safety feature, but if you start to go over 100 meters a second, subgrids freeze up or stop moving, and this can be an issue if your ship uses lots of subgrids. And sometimes your subgrids decide they've had enough and just detach if you go too fast. And last thing is the lag. Now, like I said, in most circumstances, you travelling at any speed doesn't cause any issues. But when the game has to calculate your interactions with other things like voxels or other ships, and you're travelling at very, very high speeds, it creates massive lag spikes for everyone involved. Everyone, including Keen, wants to increase the speed limit, but in order to make the game as stable as possible in all scenarios, it has to be at a low cap. I'm sure Keener at the moment are looking at ways to increase his speed limit, but until that day, we can still use mods to raise it. We just have to experience those issues I just mentioned. But rather than covering things that we know that can't be changed currently, why don't we look at changes that can be changed right now? But before that, there is a change that you, the viewer, can make right now, and that's making sure you've liked this video and subscribed to this channel. I really am fed up of the number of ships I see that are just a billion thrusters strapped together, and I think there's an easy solution to that. I don't know what the exact numbers would be, but I think we should increase the strength of thrusters. Not from a difficulty perspective, but purely from an aesthetic perspective. Let's put it this way, how many times have you built a ship, you placed your thrusters, and you try to take off, and it's too heavy? And you look at it and think, well, that looks like a realistic number of thrusters to be on it. And then on the other hand, you get those guys who place a billion thrusters in a cube around their ship in order to make it fly. Increasing the base thruster strength would not only mean I don't have to see those monstrosities that people build, but it would also give us more freedom to build better looking ships and not have to worry about where the thrusters go or where to hide the thrusters on the ships. I think this is more of an issue for small grid ships, as large grid thrusters seem to have a much better thrust to mass ratio. But small grid ships, I swear, if I see another ship that is just 1,000 thrusters glued straight next to each other in a line, I'm going to lose it. Speaking of aesthetics of ships that get on my nerves, as I mentioned in the previous section, when you place your thrusters on your ship and you place them to look aesthetically good and then you realise it's not enough, the same thing can be said about ship tools. It does feel like that every drill and welding ship just eventually results in you having 1,000 drills on the front of your ship or 1,000 welders on the front of your ship. Whilst that might be effective, it doesn't look very good. This is something I actually did quite a lot of testing on, as I made a mod that increased the drill and welding radius. Basically what I did is I took an aesthetically nice looking drill ship and an aesthetically nice looking welding ship, and I kept increasing the radius of the tools little by little in order to make them both effective and look nice. And basically that came to having a drill ship that's able to drill a tunnel big enough for it to fit through whilst it drills, which means you don't have to slap extra drills on the side of your ship in order to make it fit through a hole. And the same can be said for welders, as that slightly bigger welding area means that you don't have to rub so close to the ship that you're welding. No one really enjoys mining and welding, so having those wider radiuses means that it takes slightly less long to do everything, slightly faster to drill holes to ores, slightly faster harvesting rate of ores, and slightly less time and less welders needed to weld up a ship. All of these things would reduce the amount of time you spend doing things and allow you to have more time doing the things you actually enjoy in the game. Now there's also a small tweak to some other tools that could be made, so let's have a look at those. So now that we've covered ship tools, can we... So as I was saying, now that we've covered... Can you do that somewhere else? So as I was saying, now that we've covered... Right, that's it. I don't know about you guys, but when I use the grinder in Space Engineers, it makes my brain just stop working. It's so oppressively loud that I become unable to form a sentence. Now there is an easy solution to this, which I'm sure you're all thinking of. Just lower the sounds of them. And whilst yes, that is true, on the other hand, this is my list, so I get to suggest whatever I want. Now, whilst this isn't necessarily as easy to implement as other things on this list, I think we need more volume sliders in Space Engineers. Currently, we only have one volume slider for music and one volume slider for all other sounds. If we broke this down into categories like other games do, we could have sliders for tools, for weapons, for the UI, etc, etc. And this would be a massive improvement for players, as it would allow greater customization of their gameplay experience. But regardless, reducing the volume of tools, and especially the grinder, would be an easy change that would have a massive difference. And it would also mean that I don't need to use my S10E? Who names these weapons? In what might be the easiest change to Space Engineers on this list, it has to be one of my own personal bugbears with the game. Since Warfare 1 came out, all of the weapons have these stupid names. I'm sure they all mean something, like RO probably stands for Rocket Ordnance, and PRO probably stands for Precision Rocket Ordnance. But when I'm trying to search for these in the G menu, just can't find them. Like, how many of you knew before this video that the pistol was called the S-10 or 20 or whatever, and that the rifle was called the MR whatever? Like, if I'm searching for a rifle, I'm typing rifle into the bar. It's not like in Call of Duty where we have a plethora of weapons to choose from. We have one pistol and one rifle, and they have variants. In my opinion, it should be called rifle, precision rifle, elite rifle, like it used to be, rapid rifle, and then pistol, rapid pistol, elite pistol, etc. And then rocket launcher and precision rocket launcher. Because then when I'm searching for them, I just type in the rocket and it's there. I don't have to think, oh my god, what is the weapon called? I'm sure very soon we'll be getting some more weapons. But let's nip this problem in the bud now, Keen, before it gets too out of hand. One of the nice things about weapons actually is they have a little symbol denoting the variant it is, and that makes it really easy to recognise in the inventory. But do you know what would make it much easier to recognise? Okay, here we are again. Let's talk about coloured icons. I understand the aesthetic Space Engineers is going for, but my god, does it make it difficult to read the inventories. It's a proven scientific fact that humans are much faster at recognising colour than they are at recognising shapes or reading or whatever, so just colour the icons. I know iron has the letters FE next to it, but that requires me to engage the neurons in my brain and read. But if iron was just red, I would immediately know what it was. Same for tools. I know they have the little ticks next to them, but the ticks all blend together when they're in an inventory. If the tools were just pink and I knew that they were elite, I would just grab the pink ones. My brain would associate pink with good. I know it's not a simple change, they technically have to recolor every icon in the game, but it would make a massive difference if they were to make this change. Also, if Keen does decide to recolor all the icons, it'd be really nice if you could color in the UI as well. Because having white bars on blue UI, my brain doesn't immediately recognize it's an issue, except when they glow red, which is a really good way, by the way, to indicate to my brain that there is a problem. Also, the lady telling me I'm low on fuel 20 times in a row does also help. Do you guys have any small tweaks you would make to the game that would make a massive difference to you? Why don't you let me know with a comment below? And as always, like and subscribe for more Space Engineers content.